Hello, welcome back to Speculative Dude Reviews. I'm your host, Speculative Dude. Now, first off, I want to apologize that it's taken so long for me to get back into reviewing some movies. The last one I reviewed being G.I. Joe's Retaliation. Things have just been really hectic, and I want to apologize and thank everybody for watching my videos before, and I'll get back at them. But up now, we're going to take just a brief look at Peter Jackson's newest trilogy, a prequel trilogy to the Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit, starting with the first film, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Now, first of all, I really did enjoy this. It's one of those things, because Lord of the Rings is held in such high acclaim, it's always easy to go into a movie with a little bit of trepidation, don't know if it's going to be quite as good, I think it was done. The quality is definitely just as high as it was in the original one. CGI's come just a little bit further. So what CGI is there? I shouldn't say what little. What CGI is there looks even better than it did before. They really went over the top to make this look wonderful, as well as shooting locations in New Zealand. They did they went back, rebuilt Hobbiton again, so that everything looks just the way it did before, and just really, really wonderful. Like I said, visually, it's another masterpiece. The story itself, very solid. Now, there is a couple of drawbacks, and these aren't necessarily negatives on, due to writing or, directing or anything like that, as a lot of times we might put some fault on. This time, the drawback is that because it's a prequel, we know that Bilbo is going to live. Bilbo goes on this journey. You find out how he got, the magic ring. But he's going to live, so it takes away just a little bit of the epic feel that the other Lord of the Rings had. Where, especially if you hadn't read the books, you didn't know who was going to live, what was going to happen. This one, you have a better idea going in as to, Gandalf is going to survive, Bilbo is going to live through it to be an old man. These things, because they're coming, sadly, don't make it seem quite as huge. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't seem like a big movie. It really does. They do a great job. In the other trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Gimli sadly kind of fell under the comic relief at times, and while he was clearly a noble character and very likable character, is that he did kind of tend to fall under the comedy result. That dwarves are these kind of a little bit funny, a little bit off the wall, if you will. They're not never portrayed as noble, so to speak. Not to question that he wasn't brave and courageous, but he came off more silly more often than he did anything else. In this one, you get a band of dwarves that are actually very courageous, and while most of them do have their amusing and funny moments, they're all portrayed as very good characters, very noble. They don't fall under stereotypes that you might, or cliches, I should say, maybe not stereotypes, but they don't really fall into the cliches that Gimli seemed to be a victim of in his role. Here you have the prince, or a young dwarf prince, Thorin Oakenshield, who wants to go reclaim their ancient home when they were driven out by a dragon. And, many years ago, his grandfather was the king. They were driven out from their home when a dragon, Smaug, who we'll get into when the next movie comes out, but were driven out when he attacked their home, and they were forced to leave. Now he believes that is the time to go back and reclaim their home from the dragon. Apparently the dragon hasn't been seen for a while. You do find out at the end of the movie the dragon is still there, but maybe he was just, hibernating, so to speak. But, this, this is their journey to get to where they're going. But unlike in, say, Lord of the Rings, where they're fighting the forces of Mordor who want to take back the ring, here they're fighting for many different reasons. They're fighting orcs. Now, unfortunately in the movie, in The Hobbit, I should say, there's not really a great explanation as to why the orcs dislike the dwarves so much, other than that they make a statement that's saying the pale orc, Azog the Defiler, as he's called, he says he's sworn to cut off the line of Durin, which is the heritage line that Thorin falls under. He was a great dwarven king. But other than saying he made this vow, there's nothing really to indicate why. Have the dwarves and the orcs, been at war for a long time? Now, I'll admit, I've read the Lord of the Rings books. I have not read The Hobbit. So if there are things that are explained in the books, or in the book, I should say, that are not explained in the movies, then that's that's another matter entirely. But there's certain things that's like, okay, it would have been interesting to note why that was. They show a scene how Thorin got the name Oakenshield. When he actually fought Azog and used an oak branch to defend himself. So it was interesting. You do get good build-up for the character. Most of the other dwarves, unfortunately, don't get while they do all get a decent amount of time, so to speak, they don't get as much character focus. The one that probably gets more than anything else is there's three that probably in this movie that get a little bit more, focus than anything else. And that's the Bifur. He's a very jovial and funny kind of guy. I mean, it's clear that he's supposed to have a sense of humor rather than just be a funny character. He's supposed to have a sense of humor. But he tries to help out, but it ends up coming out like originally he was trying to explain the dragon, and he's describing it, and he's trying to do it to be helpful. And it just ends up coming off as, yeah, that's not the explanation we really wanted to hear right now. But he's done well. And then the brothers, Fili and Kili, are also probably touched on a little bit more in this movie than the others. Those three, other than Thorin himself, they probably, like I said, they get a little bit more screen time, a little bit more actually interacting with Bilbo. And I will say this for sure. Unlike in The Lord of the Rings, where the groups kind of split up, and really it wasn't until you got the character focused, over here with Sam and Frodo, and then over here with, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, that was when they split up. That was when the characters seemed to really bond. Here, the group does seem to bond together well as a larger group, which, like I said, before, when the whole group was together, you didn't really get that feeling in the other one. This one, it does feel more like they feel more like a unit, a real group of friends coming together. Now, I understand that in the other one, they weren't a group of friends. They were people who were on a journey together. Here, there is a solidarity of purpose. And, overall, really enjoyable. So it does a good lead up to the next movie, which will be The Desolation of Smaug. Every time I want to say that, I want to say Smog. It's not Smog. It's like, what is this? I don't know. No, it's Smaug. It's a little difficult to pronounce sometimes, but it's an interesting and good opening to what will be a trilogy. Now, a lot of people have brought this up, and it is a good point, that the Lord of the Rings movies were each based off of one book, roughly. There's a little bit of overlapping, as pretty much anybody would see, but like I said, each one was a standalone book, whereas The Hobbit will be a movie broken down into a trilogy. However, it's all based off of one book, and it's the shortest of the series, so there is some filler. Now, what filler is in this episode, this first chapter, is actually, in my opinion, quite good and advances the story. Some people might, say the Radagast piece is unnecessary, and, okay, I won't argue it may be a little bit unnecessary, but he does give a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for here? He does give a little bit of explanation to something that is going on, that's working behind the scenes, which we also know will build up into in this, you get, I guess you could say, an early vision of the Nazgul, who you will see in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You get to see them a little bit early. You get to see Gollum in this one. Andy Serkis does, once again, an amazing job as Gollum. I heard someone say this, and I agree with it. It's like, this, being able to pull off Gollum like this, not just the voice, but the CG work that he does with the motion capture, because he really went all out doing that. You realize, this guy deserves an Oscar for the work he's done. He really does. It's a wonderful job. I was a little surprised to see him this early, and to see Bilbo get the ring as early as he does. Now, not early in the movie necessarily, but early in the trilogy. It is towards the end of the movie when he does get the ring. But it just really, overall, I enjoyed it just as much as I did the other Lord of the Rings movies. Like I said, maybe it doesn't feel quite as epic. Although there are some good battle scenes when they fall into Goblin Town. Really good. Which is interesting, I will say. And I'll say this. Because the race of dwarves are supposed to be rather smaller, they're not shown the proportion, so to speak, is not shown quite the same as when, say, the humans and elves fight the orcs. It's shown that the dwarves need a little more effort because they're smaller. However, when they go to fight the goblins are even smaller still for the most part. So the dwarves are able to take them and look much more mighty, if you will. Just because of the goblins' diminutive size. The battle in Goblin Town is quite good. Some people compete. The very end of the fight is a little bit cheesy, with when Gandalf kills the Goblin King. It was a little cheesy, but I also kind of liked it. I thought it added. Not that it needed a little bit of silliness to it, but I thought it was rather amusing, considering the whole thing. The whole thing, I thought it was an amusing way to wrap up the fight. I won't spoil what happens, but it just, like I said, I enjoyed it. Let's see. Another thing about the filler is specifically, like I said, not just Radagast's part, but I will say this. Going into it, I couldn't quite put my finger on who Radagast. I could not place him for some reason. It's you get one of those mental blocks, and anyone who's familiar with classic Doctor Who might recognize Sylvester McCoy, who was the Seventh Doctor. And just I couldn't believe it took me as long as it did. I won't say how long it took me to realize it, but it took me forever. Considering I am a fan, I couldn't believe how long it took me to realize that. I was like, oh, of course. So he's used to doing these over the top, sci-fi fantasy style, scenarios. But anybody who's a fan of classic Doctor Who might just get a kick out of that. There's a scene, as I said, for more filler, where this wasn't in the book, but I thought it actually helped build character, especially for Gandalf, but also for what will happen in the future. When the company of dwarves gets to Rivendell, they're greeted by Lord Elrond, and he sees, greets them, they have a meal, sit down, and then he tells Gandalf, basically he and Gandalf go off to the side and have a meeting, which Gandalf was clearly not looking forward to. Lady Galadriel is there, and while Gandalf is happy to see her, you know, he's not so happy to see Saruman is also there. Now, at this point, we don't know anything about Saruman, if he has any allegiance to Sauron or not. You know, Sauron isn't even really mentioned in this. He's hinted at, and the situation is lightly touched on, but he's never implicitly said, and that's understandable. He's not the direct, you know, he's a Lord of the Rings villain. He's the Hobbit, while in the same universe, he's not their focus. And I think that was good that they didn't weigh too heavily on that. Although Gandalf does say that he believes there's something else going on, which is good because it does lead into the Lord of the Rings. But when they talk about what's going on, there is one piece that I thought was very unusual, and it could have been due to the writing, you know, but when Saruman says, you know, when Gandalf is bringing up these things that have happened, you know, the mountain trolls coming down and attacking them, you know, which, if you remember the opening of the first Lord of the Rings movie, The Fellowship of the Rings, Bilbo is telling a story to the little Hobbit children about, you know, being, you know, trapped by trolls and then the sun coming up, and you get to see that in this movie. That's quite good. But, you know, the trolls coming down from the mountain, you know, orcs attacking them, and he's pointing out these things that he feels are leading to something much larger at work. And Saruman just kind of disregards it and basically says, "Yes, but these dwarves going back to their home, I don't think that's a good idea." I was like, really? That's what you're more worried about? I mean, if they fail, then they fail. There's only 11 of them. It's not like the whole, you know, race of dwarves are going back to this one place. You know, you have 11 dwarves, a wizard, and a hobbit. You know, and that's the size of this company. So if they fail, you know, okay, they fail. It's disappointing, but it's not exactly an epic magnitude of, you know, this is going to change the course of history if they fail. No, they would probably go back to what they were doing before, realize either if they die, you know, it's would be sad that they die, but it just, that the way it's done, the scene is done in the movie, Saruman is so, you know, against them going back, well, not so against, but he really doesn't agree with them going back and trying to reclaim their home, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, it's like, okay. I mean, overall, though, it is a good scene, though, in that it establishes the characters of Saruman, Lady Galadriel, and as well as, although you did see Lord Elrond, you know, in a previous scene, it does establish the relationships with Gandalf and the characters together, and I thought that was actually really good. I know some people thought it was unnecessary, but once again, for character establishment, not necessarily development, but establishment. And although I will say, for Gandalf's development, I actually thought it was good, because at that point, when he argues the merits of what's going on and what they're doing, I thought that really goes to him being a very good, guardian, and it establishes his character well for the Lord of the Rings later. You know, it's, you know, he says, you know, this is, you know, he even says, you know, I'm doing this because I believe it's the right thing to do. You know, it's, you know, says, I believe it's right. You know, and Saruman thinks that he's just, you know, says that he's, you know, maybe, you know, just plotting something, which really doesn't make any sense, but, you know, or, you know, just, I guess he thinks that because Gandalf answers to Saruman, he feels that he should have told him more beforehand, which doesn't happen. I mean, obviously didn't happen. Gandalf just believes that, you know, I think this is the right thing to do, and this is what I'm going to do. You know, and I thought that was a really good establishment of, not just an establishment, a good development of his character. Because once you get to Lord of the Rings, you know he's doing the right thing for the right reasons. Here, he explains why he's doing it. So, it's, you know, overall, very excellent, in my opinion, story. You know, I heard somebody say that there was too much Peter Jackson in this movie. I don't know. And I'll be honest, I haven't really seen a lot of Peter Jackson's other stuff. I know he's done plenty of other stuff. But I just either haven't had the time or haven't been interested. You always have subjects in movies that we may or may not be interested in. But I hope that it. Well, I'm pretty sure that if you enjoyed The Lord of the Rings, you're going to enjoy this. I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. But if you really sit down and see this movie, I actually think in some ways it was a little bit better than the original Lord of the Rings. You do get Elijah Wood having a cameo as Frodo. You get old Frodo. Basically, you realize it's leading up to the day when Bilbo leaves on his birthday, and he's sitting down writing this story and telling Frodo the details. And it's really a good, nice scene because it wraps very neatly into what happens in The Lord of the Rings. And it's really wonderful. I enjoyed the movie. I think you will too. If you enjoy a large-scale fantasy epic, like I said, may not feel quite as big as the others, but in many ways I think may actually be just a little bit better in some respects. At least when compared to, say, the Fellowship of the Ring. If we want to compare beginnings of trilogies to beginnings of, maybe not as, I can't necessarily say it's better than Return of the King, but, perhaps, better than, a better beginning than Fellowship of the Rings was. But, for now, I'll let you guys go. That's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Speculative Dude, out.